So, Nick, as far as advice to teens struggling with SM, they haven't had a successful experience yet in being able to find their voice. They're pretty stuck. What is your advice to them?
Yeah, so I think the biggest piece of advice that I could give is that you're not alone. And coming from me, I've been exactly where you're at, feeling very lost, very almost hopeless in the sense that I wasn't sure if I would ever overcome selective mutism, but that it is possible. I think a big piece of advice that helped me in my journey was to take it one step at a time. And if there is a goal that you're trying to reach and it seems even too far out there, break that down into smaller goals to ultimately reach that bigger goal. I think that was a huge piece that helped me in my journey. My therapist called it the ladder. So I had different sets of goals along this ladder that I would try to get to, whether it was going to a store and asking an employee a question, or going to three stores, or sending a video of me talking to a friend. Like if something seemed too far up that ladder, we'd break things down into smaller little goals. And I would kind of work my way up that ladder, just stepping along those rungs of the ladder to reach those bigger goals. So definitely just take it one little step at a time.
So, it's interesting you say that. I see it as a bridge a lot because it's the steps on the bridge, which is very similar to the ladder. But that advice is great for parents because one of the things, Nick, that I see happen a lot with families just starting at the Smart Center or calling us is that they want to go from like 0 to 100. I want my child to talk in school. I want my child to say hi and bye to their aunts and uncles. I want my child to say thank you. I want my child to talk to their friends. That is just such a big goal so quickly. And what ends up happening if you're trying, and I'd love you to touch on this, when your goals are too big, they're just not ready for it, it ends up creating more anxiety and avoidance. And I think that's where the hopelessness comes in too, is that I'm never going to get there. I can't do it. And so you feel lost, like you're swimming in a huge ocean. And I think that's what you're trying to say. And I want teens to understand you can overcome it. I want adults, parents, teachers, therapists to realize that it isn't just quote unquote crossing the bridge in one foul swoop. You've got to trust the process, trust your clinician that is an expert in this, hopefully, that can really help guide you to what those steps are. And that's what happened with you. You were able to realize, where am I on the ladder, on the bridge, and work towards it in a way that you felt comfortable and safe. So you're always going to be a bit uncomfortable, right? Like trying, like 0 to 5, let's say, where 5 is the hardest, 0 is the easiest. You can't live life in 0 out of 0 or 0 out of 5. You just can't. You've got everything you want, they say, is what? On the other side of fear. But you've got to respect, you shouldn't feel a 5, maybe a 2 or a 3, right? So you have to push yourself within the realm of your ability to do it. And that's what you did.
Yeah. So there were several times where I would be engaged in exposure therapy and something seemed too big for me. And I would almost feel like I had failed in a way and that like I wasn't gonna ultimately reach that goal that I was hoping for. And there were times where I just wanted to quit and not go forward and press forward. And there were several periods of time where I would stay stagnant of where I was at in my journey and becoming verbal. And I would sort of feel like I was taking a step back, even though I wasn't really. But I think that it's important to realize that in those situations where you feel like you're kind of lost and not really sure like how you can make more progress and oh I want to talk to this person or that person or this group of people, making those smaller steps and those smaller increments is so instrumental. At least it was in my journey. I think that it's so important to realize that in the moment anxiety is sort of seen as like an arc, and that's something that my therapist also would tell me time and time again, is that like in the moment or even like after the fact, whatever that looks like, the anxiety is going to gradually rise up and it's going to probably peak right around the time that you want to start verbalizing with someone. But ultimately, just trust that that anxiety is not going to go past a certain point and that at the end of the day, you're still gonna be you. That anxiety is not gonna rule you over because it ultimately will fall again. And it's sort of like this process of rising and falling. But for me, a big piece of my journey was just realizing that this anxiety, it's not going to last forever. And it was sort of like a journey where I became more and more comfortable with that anxiety being there and not necessarily trying to like piece that anxiety out of the picture, but sort of like me accepting the fact that the anxiety is going to be with me. And that's not necessarily going to be something I can just throw away, but it was okay to live with that and still press forward with that.
I love how you phrase that too. The way I'm hearing it is that you didn't let anxiety rule you and take over. You became more on top of it and understood it is going to be there to an extent. That's one of the reasons I asked you that original question about now that you've quote unquote overcome SM. It's not like you're never going to feel anxiety in your life. It's never that you're never going to have you're not going to have moments in your life where you may feel sad. Of course you will. Life is such that you're going to have the ups and the downs. It's how you journey and the coping skills you have to deal with it in the perspective. And I love the 0 to 5 because it gives individuals a way to break that down. And all of those philosophies can take you in life. Are there any examples you have? And you may not, because I'm asking a question that it's kind of interesting. Like, are there examples of using that philosophy of breaking it down and kind of starting with where you're at and respecting your comfort and feelings for things that you do in school now?
Yeah, in a sense, I feel like throughout the engineering process of taking an ultimate goal that you want to achieve and sort of starting at square one of like, okay, let me brainstorm some crazy ideas about how I can reach this goal. I think that that's can kind of work its way back into that concept of breaking things down into smaller increments because with the engineering process you have like brainstorming and ideation and sort of like fabricating your design and like creating whatever you're trying to create. You can break it down into all these little steps to ultimately get to that bigger picture of like the final product. So this past spring I was involved in a class where it was a group project where my group was tasked with building a bridge that spanned about 5 or 6 feet and it would collapse into itself. So we pretty much had an entire semester to like create this final product. So I think that definitely allowed me to like break things down into like smaller goals where we kind of took it one step at a time of like, okay, this week we're going to do this and next week we're going to refine this process and like test it. So at the end of that, of all of that semester, it was just so rewarding to look back and be like, wow, we did this together as a team and like all these little steps, they really added up to this final product.
Yeah, it's a great example. So you broke it up and that's what you did with your treatment and here you are.